Laura joined the Rotary Club back in July 1st, 2020, correct? How could we forget that? We were just at the start of COVID. So we were really happy to have Laura join us. And she's going to tell us all about herself and her vocation. So I'll just talk a little bit about her involvement in Rotary. And despite this challenging times that Laura has come into the club, she really has found ways to participate. And we see her regularly at her meetings, and she's one of the first ones to step in and volunteer to help with different activities we do. So we thank you very much for that, Laura. And I will turn the talk over to you.
Thank you, Lynn. So unfortunately, my talk is going to be quite short. I haven't been in my vocation for long. So I guess I'll just talk about, how I got to where I am. And it'll be interesting for all of you, because as I start learning about my vocation, all of you will get to learn it along with me and see how it all unfolds. So basically, I'm from Dryden. I grew up there. And right after high school, I decided I wanted to go into medicine. So I went to Western University for my undergrad, and that's in London, Ontario. And I got a Bachelor of Health Science there. But quickly, I learned that medicine was not going to be for me. So as I went to a career fair to figure out what am I going to do with this degree I just spent a lot of money on, I came across health law, which was medical malpractice and a little bit of like hospital board work. And I thought that was very interesting. So I decided to go to law school. And I particularly sought out Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, because they actually have a health law program. And so that's where I went right after undergrad. Well, actually, I took a year off in between. It was a server, but that's not very exciting. And I went to law school.
Oh, sure it is, Laura.
I got my law degree and I graduated with a health law certificate. And here I am, a real estate lawyer, and I've never once used my health law certificate. But I still love health law. I think it's a great area of law, but I realized to practice health law, I was going to have to be in Toronto. And that was just not something I was willing to do, at least not in the long term. So I struggled a bit at the end of my law school and figuring out where I wanted to go. And remembered my trusty aunt and uncle in Kenora and thought, hey, I might want to live with them for a bit. So I did my articles at Hookseller and Lundeen here in Kenora, which articles is just like an internship for lawyers. You do it for about 10 months before you're called to the bar. And then in May 2020, I was called to the bar and became an associate Hookseller and Lundeen. And that's where I've been since. And my area of law is predominantly real estate, mainly development and just transactions. I do a little bit of civil litigation, which is just some court work and a tiny bit of everything else. But my main focus will be real estate, civil litigation, and some wills and estates. And that's what I do now. And what brought me to Rotary is throughout all my schooling, I volunteered a little bit here and there. And my undergrad project was with a company called Investing with Children. And that was where they basically identified certain schools in their school districts that were low income and have the lowest results of literacy for their children. And we would host family literacy nights at the schools with the children and their parents, where they would get resources like books and tools for the kids to learn basic math and learning skills. And we would teach the parents how to integrate those skills into their everyday lives. And that was about a once per month type of occasion. And then in law school, I was involved with our pro bono Dalhousie and doing the high school cooperative education program. So I ran a co-op program for high school students, teaching them about law and basically integrating them into the legal atmosphere in Halifax, and which that has mainly driven my focus into now I'm getting involved in youth services in Rotary and dealing with the high school students there. So I haven't done anything yet, but I'm excited to bring that experience into Rotary. And that's where I am now.
Yay.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, Lord, how did COVID impact your call to the bar? Tell us about what that was like.
Well, traditionally, the call to the bar, you go to Ottawa. It's a very big ceremony, and everyone's in their robes, and then everyone goes. It's kind of like a graduation ceremony, and you have to swear your oath. But I was being called. I was the first ceremony in COVID, so they canceled our call to the bar, and they sent me a piece of paper to sign. Which, as soon as I signed it and submitted it, I became a lawyer. So it was very anticlimactic, but luckily, my firm felt very bad for me, and they have, well, 8 lawyers including me, so 7 of them, they dressed up in their robes, and they had their own ceremony for me where one of the partners did the oath and I took the oath, and we had my family and friends on Zoom. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Bannister Center, but there's a roof that overlooks Lake of the Woods, and we went up there after and had some drinks and some appetizers, and it was actually probably better than any call to the bar ceremony I could have had in Ottawa.
That's lovely. Any other questions for Laura? Laura, not Lara.
Why did you choose Dalhousie?
Mainly for the health law, actually. The health law
Oh, that's right.
certificate.
You said that,
At
yeah.
the time, I thought I was going to do health law, so I thought that was a great place. Still was a great place.
And then on the flip side to that, why did you choose real estate?
It kind of chose me, to be honest. I during my summers in law school, I worked for Brenda Bell's office in Dryden, and she does predominantly real estate. So that's just what I learned. And then when I got thrown into Hookseller and Lundeen, it was during the real estate season, and they really needed someone to help out. So I did that. And I kind of suppressed it for a bit because a lot of my friends worked at these big firms in Toronto, and their opinion that real estate wasn't a real area of law, and if you're a lawyer, you should be in the courtroom and you should be doing all these mergers and acquisitions. So I suppressed it for a bit, thinking that it wasn't real. But then I loved it. I kept doing it. I found I gravitated to it. So then I finally just accepted it and realized that's what I really like. I don't know why. I just do.
Carolyn?
I just had a question about the health law, Laura. Like in Canada, we don't really have the type of medical malpractice suits that they do in the US, right? But do we have something on a smaller scale for that kind of thing?
Yes, we do. There is a lot of negligence in medicine, but the difference with Canada is we have the CMPA, the Canadian Medical Protective Association, and they represent all doctors, and they are fierce and they are bullies, and it is almost impossible to sue a doctor because they will drain any plaintiff. So it's very hard in Canada to actually act for the patient. And the hospital side is a little easier. Hospitals are a lot more willing to settle. But in any case, you're going to have to be in Toronto. You're going to need a lot of money. And that's why you just don't see it as much in Canada.
So why do you have to be in Toronto, Laura?
Sorry, what was that?
Why do you have to be in Toronto?
That's just because that's where all the money is. If you are going to act for anyone in medical malpractice, your firm needs a lot of money because it's on a basis. So they put out hundreds of thousands of dollars on behalf of their client to even start the action. And there's just not many firms outside of Toronto that are willing to do that. I know my firm definitely isn't.
Gotcha.
Interesting. Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Laura, you really underestimated yourself. Your talk was wonderful. Thank you very much for that. My question is, within your firm, are there going to be opportunities for you to try other areas of law, or do you think other than the fact that you like real estate, are you more or less tied to the real estate?
No. And if they had it their way, I'd probably be practicing family law because that's where there's a need right now. So they're great. I can try anything I want. And they're going to support me. There's someone there that pretty much does every, at least major area of practice. And I have dabbled in pretty much everything. But that's just real estate is where I'm drawn to. But if I wanted to pick up a family file, then someone would certainly be there to help me with it.
That's the nice thing about a smaller firm. You get to try everything. In the larger firms, I think you do specialize, don't you?
Yeah, pretty much right off the hop in a larger firm, you go somewhere and then you stay in that
Into a
department.
Department, yeah. Ron,
Yeah, I had a question, Laura. When you mentioned about the, malpractice suits, and you have to be in Toronto, and the firm has to put up, you said, hundreds of thousands of dollars on behalf of its client, and they're not prepared to do that. Why is it so expensive to have to put that up? Like, do you have 10 lawyers working on the case 20 hours a day, or?
Depending on the type of claim, usually there are lawyers that will take like 3 or 4 cases a year. And those are usually these very specialized lawyers. And a lot of times the money is going to experts, because a lot of times it's hard to find a medical expert that is willing to testify against a doctor, because usually there have to be another doctor. So there's only a select few, especially if it's a very specialized area. Like if it's an ear injury, there's only a couple in the country that are willing to do it. So they charge a lot of money. And it's getting these reports and getting these experts that cost the major bucks.
And, this is another question related to that. Then if there's a settlement that's made, who benefits the most from it? The law firm or the client? I don't want to put you on the spot or anything.
It generally is the client, and our law society does have strict rules on contingency, because any of those malpractice claims are always contingency basis. So whether or not you win or lose, the lawyer is going to get, it's usually around 30. I think 30 might be closer to the high end of what the lawyer will get. So the client's always going to come out with a decent chunk, but depending on how much you settle for, the lawyer's getting 30% of that.
Well, yeah, I guess that, the 30% of that, if they're working on contingency, that 30% goes towards their time and effort and everything, does it?
Yeah. So
it's almost like I'm fishing for a lawyer here to. No, don't worry. It's nothing like that.
A lot of the medical malpractice don't really work on billable hours. It's straight up contingency. It's a risk for them. They decide whether or not they're going to make money on this or whether or not they're going to take a hit.
At 30%, Ron, also has to cover the ones that you don't get anything. And I don't know in terms of whether or not Laura gets disbursements ahead of time, but it sounds great, but you have some losing cases.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that, having been in the investment business and dealing with, prospective investors or, as clients, and you can spend a lot of time with them only to find out that, it's not going to work. And, that can be a lot of hours. With the lawyers that don't want to take the risk or are reluctant to take the risk, I guess with them, it's just like James was referring to, if they've got a lot of other cases on the go that are covering the cost and the risk of the time, that may work out well.
or how do you think the 4-way test shows up in law?
Actually, I thought about this before, because in my office, I have the 4-way test sitting there. Is it the truth is obviously a very important one, because as lawyers, we're members of the court, and even if we know something that's going to hinder our case, we're supposed to disclose that to the judge. Is it fair to all concerned? That's what I really struggle with, because it's never fair to all concerned, unfortunately. That's why each party has their own lawyer. So that is one I'm going to have to figure out how to integrate into my practice, because it's a tricky one.
Well, thank you very much, Laura. And we're very happy that you've chosen Rotary as your community service club, and that we know you're going to do great things with the Rotary Club. We're happy you're with us.
Thank you.